Well, good evening. All right. Now, listen, I don't know if there's like a baseball team playing a game tonight in a playoffs or something, but the crowd looks a little small. So either we did not like class last week and it was too uncomfortable, and so nobody's here, or we're going to count on a lot of you all tonight to carry the weight of class for all the folks that are not here. They weren't here for the food either. I will not be offended. So I am. I'm appreciative of the fact that you're here, and for those that are tuning in online, I appreciate you joining us online as well. But felt like we had a pretty good discussion last week. We had a good heart-to-heart. For those of you that may not have been here, we had a discussion about the body and what we're for and who we're for and how we represent God collectively and separately, like being separated from the world in our cohesiveness, and that when we do that, that gives and showcases something different than what people can see elsewhere. And I feel like you allowed the conversation to be really pointed and helpful, and at least that's the way I felt afterwards, and I hope you did as well. Tonight, what I would like to do is for us to explore a topic that I'm pretty certain you've probably heard 1,000 sermons on, so I'm going to apologize in advance for that. But I think it's helpful for us to explore nonetheless because we're surrounded by all this stuff. We're surrounded by a bunch of different things. And so when we talk about hope, and it is my hope, you'll see the pun later, that everything goes well with our class as we discuss it. But when we talk about hope, there's a reason why we talk about it and why the Bible explores it and why we get different Bible verses on it. But what I'd like to ask you tonight is, does anybody have their phone? And if you had your phone and you happen to be connected to the internet and you happen to have your web browser open while I was teaching and you happen to search for top headlines, would you find hope? In fact, if you were to do that tonight, right, one of the top things that's going to come up is war, right? I mean, it's what it is. The world and all these different things going around, I mean, you can just go in circle after circle and after circle of hopelessness and senselessness and death and destruction and chaos and all types of things to really, make you feel certain ways. So one of the things that makes me feel sometimes is fear. Sometimes when I look at those things, I feel anxiety. There have been a couple of times where I'm like, man, if there were only somebody that could teach a really good class on fear at this congregation, that would be wonderful. That would be Nathan. He's done that several times. Just in case you were wondering, we do have somebody that teaches that. But there is so much stuff around us that we just get bombarded with. And I'm somebody that from a young age, I would wake up before school started. And, I'm looking over here because my brother sits over here sometimes. And I'm trying to think of, he was already in school. But I would wake up and I would watch the morning news. And this is like in elementary school. And so I would watch the morning news. And I became like a news junkie, a sports junkie, a news junkie. Like, I liked that stuff. And even into adulthood, it was something that I just enjoyed, staying up to date on whatever the news was. But, man, that's something that I can't constantly do anymore. I also look over here because my wife and one of my kids sit over there, and it negatively impacted me. It brought me down. And so tonight, because of things like that and my personal experience and trying to learn things, we're going to explore hope in a variety of different ways. And those are just some of the reasons why. So, is the world hopeless? Okay, I'm seeing some head shake. Yes, the world's hopeless. Now remember, hold on a second. We're going to take a time out real quick. There aren't as many people here tonight, and I'm still going to ask questions that I expect some type of interaction from. Okay, all right, so we're going to time back in. Yes. All right, so you believe that the world is full of hope and false hope. Ooh, okay. I like what you did there. Anybody ever watch commercials? Yeah? Okay, all the time, super annoying. Thank you. That's one of my kids, Luke, speaking up. How many of you, now, I know we're in different age groups and things like that, but how many of you ever saw something in print or on television or on the radio that was advertising something that was amazing when you were a child? I mean, just amazing. One of the things I remember were commercials for G.I. Joe. The all-American hero could do amazing stuff. Now, my friend, he had lots of G.I. Joe figures, and we had fun playing with them, but they never did what I saw them do on the television. And now, like, if you watch YouTube, and we do in our house, and we have, some children's programming, and they will show some really amazing toys. And lo and behold, my 5-year-old likes a lot of those things. And part of it is he doesn't understand that that's not like the whole package that you really get. Like, they have a whole set, and the toys don't do what they do. And so he likes that stuff. It's a false hope in that toy. Another time, we had some commercial programming we were exposed to about some T-shirts. And our son, who's the oldest in our household right now, he loved this one commercial. And he told Chelsea and I that what he really wanted the most were these T-shirts because they bring everybody together. And that was the message of the whole show, or the whole commercial was you could order these T-shirts and how wonderful they were because they brought everybody together, and he was all for it. And just the enthusiasm and the excitement, he was captivated. And we still laugh about it to this day, but those messages are powerful. Those messages are powerful. And those things are designed around a purpose, right? So in those instances that we've talked about with some of the false hope, is they're designed around us wanting something desperately and to trigger all of those things that make us want to buy something. Now, I told you a little bit about myself with looking at some of the headlines, gives me fear, anxiety, and those types of things. Those are also designed emotions and designed in a way to make me feel and act and behave in certain ways. So, I'll ask the question again, what is our viewpoint on the world? Is it hope-filled? Is it hope lost?
I sit and look at the world, and yes, it's all messed up. But it's been messed up forever.
Okay.
And it's, I'm a kid that grew up in the 60s. And you go back and look at the 60s, JFK was assassinated. You had Black Panthers. You had all of this stuff that was going on then. And everybody thought we were all going to die and it was going to be terrible. But there's still, it's always going to be terrible out there. Yes, I think we see it a lot more because of social media and all the news and all the stuff that goes on. But But you know what? With God, it's always going to be okay.
All right. So Scott brings up the point that the world's been messed up for a really long time. And so long that when he was alive in the 60s, it's been that long. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Actually, it started in the 50s.
That there were all types of things going on. You know, I personally, I've never witnessed a president being assassinated.
You know,
Somebody was attempted. Go ahead, John.
the decline is called the Roman Empire.
Okay.
It's 6 volumes written in 1760, and I'm a little insane because I read that book.
Okay.
It almost broke me. But I want to say that what you come away from that book, which took over a year to read, is that people have been being killed by the thousands and thousands from day one. So many people were slaughtered in those battles that went on for 1,000 years. The world has always been a bad place. And Satan is far more wicked than we can even conceive. And that's where we live, and the Bible is based on that.
All right. So John brings up the point that he, for the sake of everybody else, took it upon himself to read the rise and decline, the rise and fall of Rome, and brought up the fact that there has been death and destruction of thousands upon thousands of people for a really, really long time, for thousands of years. And so I'm assuming that plays into the fact of that's the world that we live in. It is a wicked and cruel place, I think is what you said, and Satan is worse than what we could ever imagine. Is that accurately?
Destroys the church.
Okay, and he destroys the church.
You just look at what he does to churches and how convoluted the messages are. We just got to accept the fact we're in a very fallen world.
All right. So, now see how easy this is? I mean, does anybody feel like really excited right now? The truth is, right, is that's where we find ourselves. And like we talked about last week, and we've alluded to a few times before, that's one of the really important things about coming together. It's one of the really important things about looking after one another, is because we live in this type of place. And to the points that were made by pretty much everybody that spoke, you know, it's not anything new. And one of the things sometimes that I do is sometimes I go back and I look at all the stuff that Paul wrote out in the book of Romans in the first chapter, and he talks about all the different things that are going on about, you know, every kind of wickedness and evil and greed and depravity and envy and murder and strife and deceit and malice, gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, boastful, invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. Fascinating that that's listed in there. They are senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Those are all things that are listed off. So sometimes I go back and look at those things when I feel frustrated or upset or disappointed in the world that I find myself in, because it's not new. But that's why hope's important. So, how would the world define hope? How do you think, if we went around with a microphone out in the areas around us, or out on the waterway, or out in Houston, how would people define hope? Okay, they hope for a specific thing to happen, like the Texans finally draft a quarterback that's good, the Astros win, some type of decision that's good, that works out.
Keep in mind that as you look at hope, it is, we're all created as God's men. We all have the same hope, worldly or Christian. It's how we seek the hopes that we want that separates us.
All right, so what I hear you saying, I'll come right to you.
I can hope for wealth,
Okay? All right? All right, so that viewpoint can impact the way that we pursue life and choices in life. And ultimately, at the end of the day, whether I am a Christian or not, there's still a hope beyond me. Okay, yes.
I think it's, since you asked the point of it being out in the world, they're going to have a hope that's not necessarily spiritual.
Okay.
Hope that things get better because of certain people getting power, that certain this or certain that. It's going to be based on a worldly type of a situation. I hope that things get better. Or I hope I get a job. Or I hope this.
Okay.
They're not going to have the same hope that we have as God's family.
All right, so
Spiritual.
So Richard's making a point that there may be these differences in hope. And so that I hope I get a job. I hope I get a raise. I hope the world gets better. I hope that there's peace somewhere versus an eternal hope. Is that right? Okay. Others? Yes.
What I encounter in the world is hope is something that they wish would happen or want to happen, but never actually expected to happen.
Okay. So Randy brings up the point that what he experiences is that people want something to happen, they desire for something to happen, but they never really expect it to play out. Okay.
Like the Texans going to a Super Bowl.
All right, so, yes, Scott. Okay, hope and faith in a similar category.
Hebrews, it tells us, you know, that it's the assurance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And that's the thing, to me, hope is it's a mindset of contentment and assurance that, man, it's all going to be okay.
All right, so Scott brings up the point that he looks at faith and hope in a similar fashion based on what he reads out of Hebrews, and that, sorry,
And you know, it's if things are always going to work out. It's an emotion that I think is more of an assurance and a contentment
okay,
of knowing that. To me, hope is it's going to be all right.
okay. So an assurance and a contentment that at the end of the day,
It's going to be okay.
it'll be okay. Yes. Okay, what you're putting your hope in.
Which is God. If you put your hope in the Lord, those hopes change to eternal and here on earth, but then you know that God's in charge, and what's going to happen is what is intended to happen.
Okay. Now, sorry, hands over here. We'll start, hold on just a sec. I'm not sure who is first.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback off of Scott because when he was saying that, I was picturing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. When they were standing before Nebuchadnezzar, they had hope, they had faith, they had hope that God would save them from the fire. They had faith that He could, but they also had hope in, you know, just being God's and doing what was right because they're just like, we know He can. Whether or not He chooses to is up to Him.
All right, so Jamie brings up the point about Nebuchadnezzar and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego choosing not to bow down, knowing that God could save them, but not knowing if He would, and still doing the right thing regardless because they belong to Him. All right, Hayden.
So we talked about earlier how, as we as Christians see the definition of hope. But you asked us if we went out to the world,
Yep.
any just random schmo, and asked them what do they think of hope.
Yep.
In their mind, hope is that they are on the right side in history or whatever, or that when time does end, is that they get what they're hoping for.
Okay.
Their hope is less like how we view it as hope in biblical terms, and more honestly like a dangerous desperation gamble.
Okay.
They don't know for certain. They'll say they know for certain, but they actually don't know. If you actually look at all what they've been talking about, and anyone who's on the internet, anyone who is right now doing the news, or anytime they do talk about hope, they are more desperately betting on something happening. That's not exactly hope that they're wanting. That's more like they're hoping somebody bails them out.
All right. So Hayden brings up the point that if we were to go out and discuss this with somebody, it's which side are they on, and a hope or a belief that they're on the correct side, and that ultimately at the end of the day, it's kind of a high-risk gamble on if they were right. Yes, Raymond.
Yeah, Ephesians 2:12 gives us a view of that spiritually. It says clearly that you're either in covenant with God and have the assurance of His promises, or you're out of covenant with God and hopeless. And then that's kind of accentuated in Hebrews 6:19, that hope that we have in Christ is an assurance that's sure and steadfast, and will hold us like an anchor in a storm.
Yes. Very well said, Raymond. Thank you for that. Because it's actually a couple. One is the illustration of the anchor in the storm, but the other is actually what we were going to look at. And when Paul was writing, he references the fact that people were hopeless, that they were without hope. And if you've ever found yourself in that place, it's frustrating because there appears to be no way out. And then you cross-referenced Ephesians chapter 2, correct, with Hebrews chapter 6, is that right? Okay. Yeah, so another section, again, I appreciate you bringing that out, that I would like us to look at, but a lot of times people think about hope as a feeling of expectation and a desire for a certain thing to happen. And whether or not that materializes or not, but that is different than what we have, as Raymond pointed out. Would you turn with me to Titus chapter 2? And we're spending a lot of time talking about what we think others think, or our viewpoint on what we might get if we were to go out to others. And there's a reason for that. If you recall last week and in times past, we talked about there's a reason that God has set things separate. And there's a big difference between the hope that we have here and the hope that we have outside the world. So we're going to look at Titus chapter 2 and starting in verse 11. For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age, while we wait for the blessed hope, the glorious appearance of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all wickedness and to purify for himself a people that are his very own, eager to do what is good. These, then, are the things you should teach. Encourage and rebuke with all authority. Do not let anyone despise you. So, what does Paul write to Titus about? What is he saying that they're waiting for? What are we waiting for? The coming of Christ, right? He says very specifically, while we wait for the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, that's what we're doing. We're waiting. And as we also spoke about in our prior classes, to redeem us from all the wickedness and to purify for himself a people that are his very own, right? That period that we talked about and that was spoken about in some other lessons that I didn't teach, but from the pulpit, about a reason for the people being separated coming out of Egypt. We're called out, we're different, but the hope that we're waiting for is the appearance of our God and Savior. I'd also like you to turn over to 1 Thessalonians. Yep, chapter 4. Yep, so we're going to look at chapter 4 and chapter 5. And sometimes we talk about encouragement and we talk about Barnabas. We don't always talk about some of the encouragement that Paul talks about. But in 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, Paul goes to great lengths to talk about hope. And we're going to start in verse 1 of chapter 4. And he says, "Finally, brothers, we instructed you how to live in order to please God, as in fact you are living. Now we ask you and urge you and the Lord Jesus to do this more and more. For you know what instructions we gave you by the authority of the Lord Jesus. It is God's will that you should be sanctified, that you should avoid sexual immorality, that each of you should learn to control his own body in a way that is holy and honorable, not in passionate lust like the heathen, who do not know God. And in this matter, no one should wrong his brother or take advantage of him. The Lord will punish men for all such sins, for we have already told you and warned you. For God did not call you to be impure, but to live a holy life. Therefore, he who rejects this instruction does not reject man, but God, who gives you his Holy Spirit. Now about brotherly love. We do not need to write you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other. And in fact, you do love all the brothers throughout Macedonia. Yet we urge you, brothers, to do so more and more. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, and to work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders, and so that you will not depend on anybody. Brothers, we do not want you to be ignorant about those who fall asleep, or to grieve like the rest of men who have no hope. We believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's own word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left till the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage each other with these words." Continuing into chapter 5. "Now, brothers, about times and dates, we do not need to write you. For you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly, as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers, are not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are all sons of the light and sons of the day. We do not belong to the night or the darkness. So then, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be alert and self-controlled. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be self-controlled, putting on faith and love as a breastplate and the hope of salvation as a helmet. For God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. He died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just in fact you are doing." So, are we filled with hope or hopelessness? Because if you're like me, it's easy to get distracted. It is incredibly easy to get distracted, not just like in, everyday activities, but it is easy to get distracted when you look up and you see everything, and you read everything, and you watch everything, and you hear what is taking place all around you, or you hear people that you work with, or you hear people that come and work for you, or you hear people that you're just in line at the store, the grocery store. There are so many people that are hurting. There are so many people, Christian and non-Christian, that are suffering. I mean, we can go down our bulletin and look at every single name of somebody that's suffering. And that's not unique. And so I find it critically important that while we are together, we do as Paul encouraged, that we urge you, brothers, to do so more and more in brotherly love, that we encourage one another more and more until the Lord's coming. None of us know what tomorrow will hold. None of us know what the next 15 minutes holds, other than I'm going to keep talking. The truth is, regardless of the fact that we don't know, there's one thing that we can be sure of. And that is Christ is coming back. Now, we read that there are lots of folks that when he comes back, it's going to be like a thief in the night. But that shouldn't be the way that it feels for us, because we know. We're part of the knowing. We're part of the aware. We're part of the self-controlled. We're part of the people that are living different. We have a hope of what lies ahead, a promise of what lies ahead. And so, while it may appear unexpected, we should not be surprised, nor should we be caught off guard. Can you imagine that? Like, there are different times where I try to put myself in other people's shoes and I think, what must it have been like for people of Jewish heritage to grow up their whole lives waiting for the Messiah to come? And when he came, they didn't know. Or for people that still are waiting for the Messiah. That's hard for me to process, because I try to think, okay, what did I think he was going to look like? I thought he was going to be ruling over everything. I thought he was going to save us from all the wickedness in the Roman Empire or whatever group is there. Maybe I'm part of the zealots, and so I'm willing to fight against whatever it is to make the way for the promised king. And then he comes. And I wonder sometimes if that's not us today in the church. We're supposedly eagerly anticipating his coming. But I don't know that that's always how I live. I live in a world where I like to be prepared. I live in a world where I like to store up things for a rainy day. I live in a world where I don't want to go without if times get bad. I live in a world where I'm not always eager to profess or proclaim my faith, because I don't know what the outcomes are going to be, the ripple effects, and so I'm maybe not as assertive as I should be. And so when I ask these questions and I think about them and I read this, I'm thinking about how I do this myself. And I see that I am easily influenced by our culture, as much as I hate to admit it. So, is the world hopeless? Without God, there is no hope. Without his Son crucified, there is no hope. Now, I don't know about you, But I feel like when I read through this stuff, as somebody who's been baptized, I'm like supposed to be a hope dealer. Like I'm supposed to be distributing the good news. I'm supposed to be an example in the way that I live my life with my family that demonstrates something different, so that those around me say, man, that Sparks family, they're weird. What is in them? Like, I mean, they're going to think that anyways, probably if they meet us, but like a real difference. Like what? Why would they act that way? Why would they behave this way? Why do they treat us this way? Why do they work this way? Why do they interact this way? Right? Paul encouraged people to live a quiet life. It doesn't mean like hidden away in a hole in a cave, although sometimes that sounds appealing to me. Luke, don't be surprised, okay? But there's value in the way that we represent. There's value in the way that we live our lives separately and independently, and with that hope that makes people wonder, what is wrong with you? You're supposed to be fearful. You're supposed to be scared. You're supposed to be anxious. You're supposed to be like driven by all these different things. Like, why won't you break? And then they find out why we won't break. Why won't you break? I'm unshakable. I have a living hope. Like, the suffering is no good. It is not enjoyable. It is painful. It is agonizing. Sorry, I will come to you in just a moment. Thank you. But like, so it's not like we're asking for those things. We're enduring them. But we have a hope. We have the hope. Yes.
Think about the times in my life where the battles around me, whether it's been my own household or family unit or just those around me, kind of so discouraged. And the hope that I once had so strong kind of diminishes, and I get discouraged, and I get sometimes hopeless about things to change. And I love the story about when the Israelites were fighting against the Amalekites.
Okay.
And as long as Moses had his hands and arms up, they were winning. But when he got tired, his hands went down and he started losing. So Aaron and Hur came, put a rock under him, set him down, and held his arms up. And I think about us as a church family, how we need to hold each other's arms up when the battle gets fierce, when each of us are fighting our own separate battles, and we lose our hope sometimes. We get discouraged, and it's hard to hold on to that hope. When I have a sister or a brother come to me and say, I'm going to help you do this, I'm going to walk through this with you, I'm going to hold your arms up as you go through this, my hope is restored really quick. And I think, okay, let's do this. I can do this, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just love that part of the church about finding hope when we go through those times. So we want to do
Yes. So the point was made that there are a lot of things that can cause us to lose hope. And sometimes when we reflect on those, it's painful. And it causes us to not be as certain or not reflect as much or not think about it as much. And then there's a story, right, of Moses holding his hands up. And as long as they were up, the Israelites were winning. And when they fell down, they were losing. And so others came to help him hold his hands up. And an illustration about that being people of the church, helping people hold their hands up during those times where you feel so discouraged. And then those times, it's truly encouraging. Now, yes.
I was thinking through all this too, is where is your focus? When you were talking about all of this, look at Philippians 4:8. It tells us to dwell on whatever is good, whatever is holy, whatever is just. You know, it goes through a whole list of things to dwell on. And if you're dwelling on those things, then you don't have room for the other things to creep in. And so I think there's a reason why we're being told to dwell
Yeah, so Chelsea brings up a really important point in what our focus is on. And when talking about the things that I was talking about, that doesn't allow us to focus on the things that Paul writes about in Philippians chapter 4, about whatever is pure, whatever is noble, whatever is holy, think on these things. And further illustration, like a deeply personal illustration of her grandmother going through cancer and suffering cancer not just once but twice, and having something up in her grandfather's office where it said, Lord, help me to remember that there's nothing that will happen today that you and I can't face together, and that her focus was on eternal life and not of this world. And that's where I get distracted. And I feel like that's where a lot of people get distracted, is we lose our focus on what those are. So I really appreciate you bringing that out tonight. All right, hope and hopelessness. Now, how many of you have ever been to a Bible class or a sermon where the preacher got up and sang one of the songs out of a hymnal? I'm not going to do that. Song in our song books, song number 430, you probably all know it. My hope is built on nothing less. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. When darkness veils his lovely face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. His oath, his covenant, his blood support me in the whelming flood. When all around my soul gives way, he then is all my hope and stay. When he shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless to stand before the throne. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. I want to leave you with that encouragement tonight, that when our hope is built on Jesus' blood and righteousness, we don't have to worry about all the rest of the stuff going on. We have the room for what was brought up about whatever is pure and whatever is holy, to allow that to fill us and to encourage one another and to do so more and more. Thank you so much for your time tonight.